Okay, so we're going to do lab 4 today. Let me share screen before I forget. There are two main parts that we're going to be addressing. One is going to be using the protocol analyzer, and the software we're going to use today is going to be Wireshark. It's already installed on your school computer. So if you do this outside of school, you would need to install it. And it doesn't require too much to install. You can find Wireshark from wireshark.org. This is a free application that you can use. Keep in mind that there are a lot of really good resources, so you can learn more by looking at its documentation or wiki page. They also offer certifications in Wireshark if you like to do this. This is something that you can add to your resume that is helpful in IT and cybersecurity. So if you want to download, and I think they have compatible application for different type of systems, right? We don't have to install this. It's already installed for us to use. So what you're going to do is to launch the application, you just type in Wireshark and open up the app. So let me close it and so I can redo that so you can see. I was just testing there. So I just do Windows search bar and type Wireshark, right? Like I said before, if you don't have this app on your home computer, you can install and it's a free download. Okay. If the little update prompt pop up, just close it. You don't need to, you can't install updates on their system anyway. So now when you install Wireshark, you are going to be prompted to install npcap, which is a software tool packages that allows your network adapter to be aware of other traffic that's around it. This is a way that we can sniff out everybody's traffic on the network. So the things that can be used with this is endless, right? So for example, if I'm an attacker, I can attach to your wireless network and run this so I can see all your data that you download, perhaps be able to steal your encrypted information and try to break it. There's so many ways that you can use Wireshark for, but from the blue team side, you would see that Wireshark can be used to monitor all the activities that's happening on the network. We can also use it to analyze what's coming into our network and also pull out, like I mentioned before, malware. So this is a very common tool compared to other tools like Snort and so on. So a network monitoring tool is always good to learn. So once you have this, you are going to click your adapter that you use. So if I run this on my laptop, I don't have Ethernet adapter. I would click the Wi-Fi option, right? So select your adapter that you want to use to look at your network traffic. So I'm going to click Ethernet. Okay. And then once I select this, I'm going to click the blue fin at the top left, right? Or you can just double click the option, but click the blue fin to get it started. So what you're going to see is you're going to see a lot of things happening. It would look at, not just my traffic, but what's going on around me as well, right? See how all of those, right? And what I did was I borrowed some information from the resources online, and I had given you some of the main color coding for the packets. So packets are used by router to bring traffic, right, to other networks. And if you see some of the main color coding, you would know it's a certain type of protocol. And while it's doing that, I'm going to go ahead and open up my browser. And what I want to do is I want to generate a specific type of traffic because I want you to evaluate it. So you are going to open up your browser for step 4 after you start your Wireshark, and you're going to visit this website. So I can simply press Control and click it. So what I want is I wanted to generate some, I wanted to actually visit, it's going to try to push it through HTTPS. but I want you to actually access HTTP. Okay. And it tells you, oh, it's not secure, right? And then you just want to allow it anyways. Okay. Or you can find an HTTP website to be able to do that. So let me see. Okay. So all I want is, I just want to generate this specific traffic with HTTP, right? Look at your URL bar, make sure it loads HTTP and not HTTPS because they're different ports. Okay, then what we'll do is we are going to let it run for a few minutes, and then we're going to click the stop button, which is the red button at the top. So again, right, let me start, restart it so that way you can catch up. So I first open up Wireshark. I select my adapter. Right now I'm using Ethernet. So it's going to give you a bunch of adapters. You wanted to make sure that your adapter is connecting. It's going to show you the little graph. Click a Ethernet, right? If you don't have Ethernet on your computer, you would then use the other adapter, but make sure that it is active, right? It would show the little graph. And then you're going to click the blue fin at the top left, this button right here under File. And then what we're going to do is we are going to open up our browser. You can use Edge, Chrome, or whatever, and you're going to visit that HTTP website. There's not a lot of HTTP website around anymore because I think, you know, overall everybody has transitioned to HTTP. And it tells me, oh, this site doesn't have a certificate because it's not secure. That's fine. We want to kind of load it. So I'm intentionally generating this type of traffic so that way I can actually look at the packets. Okay. Then you wait a minute and then you're going to click the stop button at the top. Right? Okay. So while that's happening, you can look at the chart and it tells you that if you see the light blue, that will be UDP, light purple is TCP traffic, your black tend to be error. Sometimes that might show up as the dark red color. Light green is going to be HTTP traffic. So later on, when you look at the packets, you're going to see the light green. And then light yellow tends to be your NetBIOS, right? Or your SMB. We talked about these two protocol. You see some of this in all networks, especially Windows network. And then if you see dark yellow, that's mostly like routing, and here they use Cisco appliances. So you see that. And then your dark gray tends to be your SYN ACK. Usually that's four-way communication for TCP confirmation, right? Synchronize, acknowledgement, accent, and then finish, right? Or final. Okay. So, and then when you look at the packets, these are some of the things that components of the packets, and we'll take a look at those. So now I'm going to go ahead and pause. Now, some captures are going to be very large, also depending on your network and how many systems are connecting. If you have capture a long period of time, that's going to be a large file. If you capture in Wireshark, you likely would be able to open it in the same application, right? It should. But you can also capture it and save the PCAP, and you can open it up in other protocol analyzer, right? So we can go back and play it back. So that means that you just take a snapshot of it at the moment in time, and you can go back and dig a little deeper into each of the information. Okay. So what we're going to do is we are going to go to this right here, and we're just going to scroll up. And I simply want you to just look at the first packet. It doesn't have to be an HTTP packet. You notice that it lists the protocol for you right here, right? So in the lab, after you pause it, you stop it, you're gonna scroll your scroll bar up and you are going to go to the first packet, packet number 1. It will say number 1 right here. And it might record the amount of time that that packet is coming through, where it's coming from, right? And which where it's going to. So from is the source and destination is where it's going to. And the protocol, this one uses UDP, right? And then if you scroll right or expand, you would be able to see, right? It has the length information. Sometimes you would see more details here depending on the packet. So basically that, right? And on the lower pane, that gives you like more detailed information about the packet. Based on what we learned about the MAC address, you already see this MAC address is interpreted. That's a Cisco system. So that's a network appliance, right? And because it's UDP, you're going to see the UDP option here. If it's TCP, it's going to show that here. Whichever protocol that it mainly used, it's going to give you that extended information of that protocol. Now I can double click the packet to open it up, and you should see the same thing that's on the lower pane here, right? So if you go through the OSI layer, you would see that this is layer 2, your frame. Okay, remember frame is where it starts to structure the data, so it adds header and all of those things, and preparing for the next level, which is the packet level. So you do see some frame information here. It tells you the timestamp when it arrives, right? Encapsulation type, we talked about that. And then also frame number. Remember that all traffic are in pieces, okay? So there's some frame information there. So what type of traffic is the first packet? So what you want to do is you want to look at it, and the type of packet, you simply just put its protocol. So in my case, I have a UDP, right? You might have a TCP, you might have a UDP. So you can say whatever the protocol. So I would put C protocol, and that might be like a UDP or TCP, right? So put TCP or UDP, whatever you see. So in my case, I have a UDP. Now, if you look down here, like for example, if you see like a WireGuard packet like that, WireGuards is a form of security appliance. So you do see some of that, floating around, so you would see, and that function as a transport. Remember, firewall, filter, and forward. So you see that it checks, right, to see if that packet passed or no, right? And that's how it transported to the next layer. So so you see some of that, but my first packet is a UDP packet, so that will be my answer. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to click on the protocol tab. This is allowing you to sort by protocol. So if you click it, right, it's going to be able, you can do ascending sort, A through Z or Z through A, or whichever that you would see. Okay. Now this app has came a long way from when I first used it. So they make it more intuitive, and it is a lot nicer with all the color codes and things like that. Okay. So if I want to search for an HTTP packet, I can simply type HTTP, right? At the filter bar, which is like right below all your buttons. And I would click the blue arrow or press enter. All right. So now you can sort and scroll down, right? In a large network, it's not ideal for you to go through the sort mechanism only. You should filter and sort, which is allowing us to. So if I do the filter, I just type in the protocol type here. My protocol is HTTP. I'm looking for HTTP. So I would filter. So type that in and press enter, or click the blue arrow. Okay. Is everybody okay so far with that? All right. So now I see, right? And we talked about how HTTP needs to have, because it's TCP, it needs confirmation. So whenever that you see a GET, that means that it's, it's connecting to that particular web server. So you do see some information, and then the status, it will tell you whether it's load, okay. 200 usually is okay. That's a status code for HTTP. But if you get a 404 or 403 error, that's an error, right? So, and it is light green. That's what you see. So how many packets do I have, right? I have many, right? So if I do this on a virtual machine, it's usually would be like only maybe a very few packets for the website that I visit. So I'm going to show you a trick to answer that question. Click on statistic and click on HTTP and click on packet counter. Okay, again, on your Wireshark, to answer that question, after you filter out HTTP, click statistic, right? HTTP, and click packet counter. I didn't put this in the step, and it will count all the packets for you. It's beautiful because I don't want to sit there and manually count and then I lose count, right? So in my case, I have a total of 73 HTTP packets, right? Again, statistic, click on HTTP after that, and then packet counter. Okay, to count. So here, statistic, HTTP, and then packet counter. And it even tells you like how many were successful. Did you have any kind of error? So if you are testing your network traffic or your servers, this is also very useful, where you look at that segment and you capture it, and you can see if your web server is responding, if your client are connecting to it successfully before you roll out your web server, right? Okay, so you should be able to answer that question here. So I'll make a note of this and I'll re-upload it. So you click statistic and then select HTTP and then select packets counter. Okay, so we would be able to see that information, and then I can close that window, right? Okay, so now we have the HTTP packet. We're gonna dig deep into it. So I would just, you can select one. But first, let's see which IP address is my computer, right? Because I can also find only my traffic or specific system traffic. So you would refer to the source number right here, right? So let me find that real quick. So I'm a .22, right? So if you do ipconfig and you can find, so this is from my computer and it's to the web server right there. You see the 146 to 75 because I keep loading the website, right? And when it does the get, it's trying to reach, it's making a request to that web server. So this is from my system and this is to the intended server, right? You see that there? So when you sort it, you might see your system, okay? And then when that server responds, that's the next packet you see right there. So I'm gonna go ahead and double click it, right? And because it's in the HTTP packet, you would see the HTTP right here, your hypertext transfer protocol. So in the next step, it tells you to expand that packet or double click it. You can also view it on the lower pane. And then you need to kind of find the information about it. Okay. So when you analyze a packet, you have to look at what it is, right? When it was sent, who sent it, and the details. So if you can double click or look at the Ethernet option right here, I like to double click because it gives me a separate screen and it's bigger, right? So if you expand the Ethernet, so it tells me which appliance handle my packet, right? Like the post office. So here it would tell me that, right? So this is my Dell, and it's sending it to the Cisco appliance. And so you can answer the question, what is the source IP? But when you look at your packet, the source is right here. So this one is my IP address. So you can type your IP address or the source IP address, right? So 151.101.10.12. So look at your packet information, the column where it says source, right? And then the destination is the next IP address to its right. So that will be, for me, that will be the 146.75.94.172. What is it? 95? 75.94. Okay, so look at the IP on its right. This one, the destination. And then what we're going to do is we're going to look at the TCP part of the packet. So now you're going to go into the port information. Okay. So again, when you double click, TCP is the fourth option on that. Click the arrow to expand it. And it tells me the source port where it's sent from. That's like the window where it leaves from, or the door that it leaves from is that number. And then the destination port, I already know this because HTTP uses 80. So when it gets to the web server, it uses the port 80. Right. And again, I'm only looking at HTTP packet, right? After I filter. So if you click TCP, you would find the source port and the destination port, which is what it shows here. Now, payload pertains to data. Okay. So if you scroll down to see if you have any kind of payload information, sometime if it doesn't have, so payload, that's the size of the data that is sent with that packet. So if you scroll down a little bit closer to the bottom of that TCP section, you would see the payload data size. Now, some packets would have more or less, right? Depends. Usually you would see payload information is there. And then if you want to look at like acknowledgement and so on, you can put above that in the timestamp, how it receives and sends. Okay, so TCP gives us port information and payload size information. Now we're going to look at the hypertext transfer protocol, the protocol that's used for the service. Okay, so once I'm done with the TCP section, I can click the arrow to collapse it, and I can expand the last option, which is the HTTP, and it would give me the details. Remember, I had a message earlier where it says that I have to like update it, right? Using HTTPS and the agent, usually that pertains to the service or additional software that's used. So what you see is the timestamp of the packet. Do you get the timestamp of the packet information here? Sometimes if it doesn't show here, you can always go back to Ethernet. I'm sorry, to frame, and it shows that there. Okay. because sometimes it doesn't tag it with the time that it gets this information. If you go back to frame, you should be able to see your timestamp, the actual to the second. So it arrives, and in computing world, right? We want to record everything in universal time, even though we function in Pacific time. Okay, so the timestamp of the packet, it tells me in the frame, right? Because if you can't find it under HTTP, click on frame and you would see it there. And then go back to HTTP requests. It tells me, does the packet contain HTTP request or response? Well, does it tell you whether it was response or request? So it does have the request and also the response. So initially it is a request. So you see that on the bottom right there? It might say that it is a request, right? But because it's HTTP, they recommended that you should update using more secure protocol. So you would click. So you can say that that will be a request. Now, if you look at the second packet, it should say a response because the server is responding back to your request, right? So if I go to the next one, that should be a response. Okay. Any question? Okay, so now what we're gonna do is we are going to, here it says double click the HTTP packet and view the packet information, what type of connection is shown, what kind of user agent is there. So if we already click on it, so we would have connection information that's keep it alive. So it's staying connected. Okay. So whenever you see keep alive, that means that it continues to establish that connection until the response is fulfilled. Okay. Then your user agent, that would pertain to additional services or information that would relate to your systems. So here it would say Windows Update Agent. And so, and you notice this when you type in HTTP, it loads the what? The HTTPS instead, right? Okay. All right, so we should be able to answer the next two questions here for 14. Then what we're going to do is we are going to follow that packet because there are many back and forth communication with the systems, and we want to follow the stream. Sometimes you would have many packets coming through, right? And it's back and forth communication with the system. So this is a way that we can track or analyze how the two systems communicate. So for 16, what you will do is you are going to, you can close the packet information here, go back to your Wireshark. Don't close that, right? We're going to go ahead and click Analyze. And then we're going to go down to Follow, and we would select HTTP stream for step 16. Now, if you're using other protocol, then it would allow you to select other protocol stream. Because I selected an HTTP packet, I'm going to have an HTTP stream. So for 16, we're going to click Analyze, and then go to Follow, and then HTTP stream. This right here is going to give you the information about the actual conversation of the two systems. Let me see. I think there might be. Yeah, they probably changed the interface a little bit. So when you do the follow part right here and go to HTTP stream, you get this prompt, right? And it tells me specifically about this packet information and the conversation with the systems. It would tell you the number of packets. If you look at the bottom, you see this part right here. It tells me that there are 35 client packets, 35 server packets, so 69 turns, right? And it's through, you know, these packets information. So you can put down this answer for the next question. Actually, it doesn't give you the SYN and ACK anymore on these. We have to use a different feature to analyze it. Keep in mind that the software updates, the way that they have you interface it is a little bit different. So the prior version, you can actually see the SYN and ACK, but I think you can find that through the statistic option. So I think for 16, you can just give me like how many clients, which is for synchronization, and then how many of the response, which is for the acknowledgement, right? And then for 69 turns. So again, analyze, follow HTTP stream, and look at the number on the bottom right here. You see where my cursor is? It tells me the packets. They don't give you the syntax information there anymore on the newer version here. Okay. Now, what we're gonna do is we are going to look at UDP packets, but we're gonna look at UDP multicast stream, right? So go back to your Wireshark window. Make sure you clear out your filter by clicking the red X right here. Okay. And then what you're going to do is you are going to select statistic and then UDP multicast. So statistic and let me see. It's not clearing my filter. Yeah. So if you got to go down the list a little more. Right here. So we're going to do a multicast stream selection so you can see how many systems or, you know, what is the source port on this. So you would see that the port that it sends for the multicast is here, right? The source port and the destination port and the systems that are sending. So you would then see the UDP multicast stream, how many was captured. So you would be able to see that on the bottom right here. And it all depends on when you capture, right? How many systems communicate while you capture. So it would be varied. So if you do this 5 minutes from now, that will be a little different, right? How many systems are connected and do that at the time that you capture. So in my case, I have 3 packets, right? And then I have 3 individual systems that does that right now. Right. So once we see the italicized information, you can verify that with the 3 and the 3 packets information right here. We can close this. Now we wanted to see how many endpoint systems are connecting. So when I say endpoints are like workstation, laptops, Android, mobile devices, iOS mobile devices, because those are the systems that no one else is connecting after it, right? Routers and switches are not endpoint systems. Endpoint systems are the systems that are connecting as a client to the network and nothing else is connecting from it. Right, so what we're gonna do is we are gonna look at the endpoints. So again, when we come back over here, let me close this to your Wireshark, right? And it tells you to be able to connect statistic and select endpoint. You can also look at conversation, back and forth communications. You can look at other things. So there are a list of different things that you can select right here. So we're going to select endpoints. And then we are going to look at the type of packets that's transmitted, that's TCP. So once you have that open, right? And on the left, you can see that you can also, it's looking at all Ethernet. You can also like specify your filter on the left. So TCP, if you look at the tab, there's a lot of students are like, how do I know how many are TCP? Right here, it says 96, right? That's 96 packets that are TCP. You see? And then how many endpoints do I see here, right? If you look at the tab for Ethernet, it tells me these are the appliances or the systems. And it counts it for you already. So look at the number next to the tab name. And then for the TCP, I see for mine, it says number, which is 96. How many packets uses port 80? So you can sort the port by clicking port. Just click the tab port underneath after you click TCP tab, and I would see the 80. Okay, because automatically it's going to sort ascending, so 80 is lower than the rest of the ports. So you can see that there. Okay, so click on the port tab, which is this right here, and you can see. And that's under TCP because port 80 is TCP. It's HTTP for TCP. Okay. And then if you're curious about different IP address, different IP information, you can also find those there. And then there's UDP. So this is endpoint conversation. These are the packets that are sent and received by the endpoint systems. All right. Any question? So I'm going to give you a very summarized version of the Wireshark, right? I want you to go in and use other features and tools. You can also filter out Bluetooth information. This is very important for monitoring your communication systems, and also like from a security standpoint, we can look at like, flaws and things in our communication and monitor who's talking. And the attacker, they can use something like this to look at who's talking as well, right? Okay. We can close this now. And what I want you to do is sometimes you have to interpret this and put it into some kind of graphs to get an overall picture, or you can use it to present to your supervisor and say that we need, like, maybe more resources and systems to improve our network performance. So go back here to the Wireshark. It tells you to click statistic, right? And you're going to select IO graph option, which is right here. This gives you the visualization of your network overall. But again, right, like right now, it's showing the red in error. So you can add additional parts to your graph for interpretation purposes. So if I'm looking at error, that's the red section right here, and it's default to that, right? So you can add the component to your graph by clicking the plus, or subtract from it by clicking the minus, and you can navigate by scrolling up and down. So it depends on how complex you want your graph to be. So if you are a network analyst, if you are a security analyst, this type of tools is important to you. Because ultimately we want to look at, like, possible the peak, especially when we're under attacks. Like, because if you're getting denial of service attack, you're going to see a flood of that same packet repeatedly, right? Or distributed denial of service that might be coming from different sources and targeting you, right? And you need to shut down some of that activity right away, but you can diversify that traffic. And then you need to be able to analyze that after the fact or even during. Okay? All right. So now what we're going to do is we're going to focus on DNS, right? So we can close the graph once you look at it. And then we are going to open up Wireshark statistic, and we're going to look at the conversation. So in the conversation, it's similar to what you've seen with the endpoints, again, because those are the only, like, so many systems that we're communicating. But in this is back and forth communication with the systems, right? And then in the conversation, I want to click on the UDP. So UDP is user datagram protocol. It is used for fast transfer purposes, maybe in some streaming, but particularly used for DNS traffic. And if you look at port 43, that's DNS. I mean 53. I'm pointing at 53, I'm saying 43. 53 is DNS. Okay. So now if I sort the port, I should be able to detect, like, the lower port number, which is the 53 is what I'm looking for, right? So if I click on port B, I would see how many packets or back and forth conversations. So each of these entry, it'll tell you, like, this entry has 4 packets for UDP. But this entry has 14 packets for UDP for DNS. 53 is DNS. So again, once I open up the conversation, I click UDP tab, and I should be able to click on port B column, and it should tell me what are the ports listed, right? So you have 53, 1900 here on my capture, and then some of the upper ports. And is 53 being used for UDP traffic? Yes. And that's DNS. So you always gonna see DNS under your UDP, and it uses port 53. We talked about DNS today, so I want to show you that. Okay, we can close this now. Any question? Okay, we now gonna look for IP version 4 IP address. So if you click statistic and IPv4 is on the bottom. So let me move this up a little bit. So I'm doing 30. So we're gonna do statistic. We're gonna do IP version 4 statistic. And then we're gonna do IP protocol types. We are going to narrow it down by the protocol types for IP. And it's going to give you the two groups always, UDP and TCP. So you're going to have a mix of different systems. Some system uses both type of IP addresses, like IP version 4, IP version 6. Administrator, they like to have some, maybe the majority using version 4, and then you have maybe new appliances using version 6. This is how you can take a look at the analysis for this. So it gives you the count for the packets that are using UDP and TCP using for version 4, IP version 4 systems. And then you can see the percentage here. So the majority of my traffic is UDP, and that's typical, right? You would think that there would be TCP, right? But like I said, it's also depending on the service that you have, the type of systems that you use. So comparing one network to another, is that always going to be the majority? Yes and no, but UDP tends to be more popular because of the fast transmission. So at this moment in time and the type of network we're in, we just have higher UDP usage, right? And then my TCP is about approximately 20% or a little over. So you should be able to answer that there. So the total protocol types is this many, right? And it breaks down to each category for the protocols. Okay, once we look at that, we can dive down to the DNS. So we're going to go statistic and then specifically DNS. Earlier, you looked at UDP, including DNS. Now we're going to look at DNS. And you're going to do general selection. So if you click statistic, DNS, we're going to do general because you can have query and response, but we can do general, which gives us everything. Yeah, that wasn't there in the last version of the software, but it's changed now. So what is the total packet counts? Your total packet counts at the top, I would see that there. So I have 36. There's no error, so 36 complete successful. Now for your query and response, you're gonna go down to the query and the response section. But on the new feature, you can see statistic, you can do DNS, and then you can do query and response, and it will give you specifically that. This is something that they just added. So statistic, DNS, you can select general to get everything. And then the response rate, the response and query. So I have 18 response and 18 query. I mean, 18 query and 18 response, so 100% success there. Whatever was asked was fulfilled. So if you add the 18 and 18 together, you should have 36. Now, once you have the information that you need, right? So as an analyst, you have to be able to take what you recorded and interpret that in a common sense where, if you're doing network analysis, you can say, how's the performance and all of that. And then if you're doing security analysis, you look at the packets and see the traffic and analyze it in a sense that would relate to security solutions. Or first you have to find the deficiency and then explain, how that would improve. Okay, So I think we should be able to knock this out really quick. I want to show you how you can set up IP address in Linux. We're going to do this first, and then we'll do Windows in the next lab. Okay. And Kali Linux is a really good version to use if you want to get into security. It has a lot of tools that you can use, but it's not the only version that you need to use, right? You should start here. Okay. So you can visit kali.org, or if you use the link, it'll take you to the download. But at home, right, they have documentation and everything for you to use. And if you click the download button, it'll take you to all the downloadable port option. If you want to install Kali on your computer, you would get the installer images. We're not using this today. Okay, so you get an ISO or the package to install. We're gonna download the virtual machine today for VirtualBox, so it would take like 4 minutes to do that. If you want to install Kali on your Raspberry Pi, you would download the ARM version here. Make sure you read the documentation before you attempt to install, because you have to do some setup with ARM. If you want to install Kali on your Android old phone or with, some mobile device like an old tablet, you would download this option. And then if you want to run Kali as an instance on the cloud, you would go to this option. If you want to use Docker or Kubernetes, you would use the container. If you want to make a live boot USB, I would recommend this over installing Kali on your computer. Because Debian Linux will take over and you cannot do dual boot is harder than most, right? So all you need is maybe 8 gig USB, and then you can make a live boot and you can practice that way. Just plug it in as long as you allow boot with USB. So there are basically a lot of options with Kali, and they do change their tools throughout. Okay, so we're going to go to the virtual machine, and you're going to download. You click the blue arrow down right here for VirtualBox. I think I already downloaded earlier, but I want to show you. Now, if you use other hypervisor, you would select the other hypervisor here, right? Don't download the weekly. You're going to find that sometime it runs into problem loading. Download the stable version, which is the recommended. Okay, do not download the weekly. Now, if you use Edge to download, make sure you save your download, and then you're gonna open it. Okay, so I have downloaded my Kali Linux. I'm gonna go to my downloads folder, right? And I would see that there. It should show a little zip symbol. So in order to run Kali Linux virtual machine at home, you need to have VirtualBox. You need to have 7-zip so you can extract, right? And then of course the virtual machine downloads. Okay, so once I have downloaded, I'm going to cancel this real quick. Oh, to do that. Okay. It shows up like this with the zip symbol. You're going to right click, show more options, and select 7-zip. It has to be 7-zip to extract. Okay. Don't try to click extract all. You are going to have a fatal error, especially just for Kali, right? Because the way that they zip it, if you look, it is archived or compressed as a 7-zip. Okay, so right click, show more options, 7-zip, extract files. Okay, so download the virtual machine for VirtualBox, this one right here. Save it to your downloads, and then go to your downloads, right click, show more options, and select 7-zip and extract files. Okay. All right. So once we have it extracted, it's going to show up with a folder without the zip symbol. This is where you're going to play your virtual machine. Okay. Don't play it from the one with the zip symbol because you will get a fatal error when it loads. So download, extract with 7-zip, right? And then you're going to find a folder without the zip symbol, the uncompressed folder or decompressed folder. Then you're going to open it up, open up the subfolder. You're going to see 2 files. We saw this last week. The blue and the red. Always run the blue icon file. Double click it. Okay. So you notice that I can't load my virtual machine. It's because I already had it on the list. So let me remove it. Okay. So you can double click the file or you can click add and then go find your downloads that you extracted. Open up the folder, open up its subfolder and find the blue icon file and click open. So when you double click, it loads it to your playlist or you can add it to your playlist by navigating to it. Click add and navigate. And then now I can start. So virtual machine for VirtualBox, you cannot have the same name of the VM loaded to the playlist. Earlier it tells me I can't play because I already have it there, right? I try to add something that already exists. So it didn't like that. Okay. And if you have complication with loading the VM, let me know. Okay, so once it loads, it's gonna look like this, right? So if you take my forensic class, they haven't started using Kali much yet. They only use it once. But we like to use Kali Linux a lot because it is a Debian release. It has most of the tools, or you can add more tools to it. If you want to go for ethical hacking, they have their own certification in offensive security. I highly recommend you get it if you want to be red team, right? And if you're really good at it, you would do well, right? So, and to study for this, you can refer to their resources. Offensive security certification is not cheap, but it is worth it if you are red teaming, right? So, all right. So once you're here, you're gonna log in with Kali and Kali, Kali for username and password, the same. Okay, so this is the desktop. Everything that you see in Windows is at the top, right? Like all your taskbar, it's just Linux is a little different in their desktop environment. The things that we need is going to be the terminal here, the little black square. This is the command line that we use most often. But if you want to explore Kali, you can click on this and it has preloaded applications by category. So if you want to practice credential access, like, like brute force password and stuff, there's a bunch of stuff in there for it. Reconnaissance. So they group it by the 13 stages or the 14 stages in attacks. So you can go through and you can practice if you want. But we are going to click the black square right here, which is going to be our terminal. And in current version of most Linux release, you just do an IP space address to find your IP address. You're going to see that there's a loop back, which is the 127.0.0.1, and then I have an inet address, which is the 10.0.2.15. Okay. And you see the broadcast, it's a .55. We talked about that today. So again, once I load my desktop and log in using Kali and Kali, I am going to open up my terminal, which is, and you can open as many terminal as you want. You know that, right? You know, it's just you can have many terminal doing different things. So just click the icon and you would be able to input the command IP address. Now, if you use the up arrow key, it just repeats the last command that you use, right? So I have a loopback address. So Linux refers to it as inet for IP address. So I have a loopback address. And then if you see Ethernet 0 right here, that's the first adapter that is Ethernet. And this is the IP address in purple right here. Right? So you would record the loopback, which is the 127.0.0.1. And then the inet, the second inet IP, which is the 10.0.2.15. You can take a screenshot. So to screenshot, we can use snip. And then click new, drag this, right? It should copy for you, but you can go to snip itself and then click the copy button right here. You can save the image and insert it, but you should be able to Control V and paste it once you snip it. Okay. So this shows you how to look at the IP address. Now, what we're going to do is we are going to create or input a static IP address into our virtual machine. So I want to show you how to do this. So in case you need to do it on your Linux server or something, you can. Okay, we can close the command line. On the top, this little icon right here, right next to the speaker on the left or the top right middle is your Ethernet symbol. That's your adapter. Okay. You're going to click it and you're going to click wire connection. Now, if I cannot find it there, I can also go to my option right here, right? And I can search for like network connection and it would be able to find it, but click the Ethernet symbol or the icon and then wire connection. By default, most virtual machine would see everything as Ethernet adapter. Oh, what did I do? I disconnected it. Let me retract that, sorry. We don't want, it's supposed to take you to property from here, but hey, they changed. So, okay, now let's try, you can go through here and then we're gonna do network. So I think you have to go through advanced network configuration now. It doesn't let you through that way anymore. So let me change the instruction right here. Yeah, I did say that. Click on application and then click on settings and click on advanced. So you can search for advanced network configuration or you can navigate through that way, right? You have to go through and then find settings, but I just search for network configuration. Okay, so click the dragon, right? Search for network configuration and it will come up. Then under Ethernet, you're going to click wire connection and double click it. You're going to see these options. We can click on IPv4 settings. And then you're going to add an IP address. So again, right? I'm going to click the dragon. I can just search for network configuration or type in network. And I click on advanced network configuration. It shows me my adapter. Click on wired connection, double click it. and it's bringing you to the property. Here, because you are set to put in static IP, click IP version 4 settings, and then you're going to click the add button in the middle, and then you're going to type in the IP address. Okay? So we are going to do the default class B 172.168.12, and I would let you choose the last octet. So as long as it's between 100 and 250. So let's say I'll pick 103. You can do 104, 109, whatever you want, 200. And then once you do that, you are going to press tab or click the subnet mask option. And we're going to use the default class B. So 255.255.0.0. Okay. And then you are going to, so that's what I put for step 49. So what's your network ID? The first 2 octet, right? Yours 172.168. That's the, so this is your network ID right here. I should highlight it in a different color. And then we want to have a default gateway too to complete that, right? So now by default, we are going to use 172.168.12.1, right? That's would be your first gate that you enter or leave. Okay, so once you have all of those things, right, you're going to click save. Now, I'm just going to let you know that sometime, right, it doesn't take effect right away. If you check IP address right now, the old stuff might come up. The best thing to do is restart, right? You know, and the command for that is reboot. But you can also click the power button and restart. But let's check it, okay? My experience with Kali VM and or even Kali in general. So if I do IP address again, right? See how I said it's the old stuff is still gonna show up. So the best thing to do when you update your IP on your Linux system is restart, and you can check. Okay, so we talked about how many bits are used for network ID, right? 8 bits plus 8 bits, you should have 16 because it's the default class B. And then which class is used? Well, it's a default class B. I just said that, right? So class B. So I put the table there for you to refer to as well. And then put in your default gateway, which I did that already. Take a screenshot of that. Now we're going to reboot. It's going to take seconds. So type reboot in command prompt or click power restart. And then it's going to boot up, log in again, and we're going to check our IP address. So open terminal once you log back in. And voila, right? I have the new IP here. Okay, so take a screenshot. So you should say, yes, I found it. It's here. I did it. Right? And I want proof that you did it. Now what we're going to do is we're going to change it again. So this lab part teaches you to do it through the graphical user interface and through the command line. Okay? Every time you change, you need to restart. So we're going to do super user do. Sudo allows you to elevate your privilege from your regular user Kali that you logged into a higher privilege account. We're going to do sudo IP addr add 12.0.0. And let's say that I'm going to use 105, right? You can use 109 to 211, as long as the last octet is in that range. Now, earlier you saw that I can add as many as I need, so it's going to create another IP entry into my IP table for my system. Okay, and it's going to prompt you to the password, type in the password. Don't pay attention to the cursor. It's not going to blink or move. Just type KALI, press enter. And if you typed it wrong, it's going to tell you, see, type again. Oh, did I? Oh, I forgot the argument. So I have to do the /8, all of those things. So sorry, I was too ahead of myself. So we're going to do the first adapter, which is your Ethernet 0. You got to put a /8. This indicates the 255 octet for your subnet mask, right? This is, we're adding a class A IP, so that's a /8. If you do a class B, you're going to do a CIDR of /16. If you do a class C, like the 192 address, you're going to do a CIDR 24. Okay? And there's no CIDR 32 because that's 32-bit address. Okay, so make sure that we do a full argument, and we're going to press enter. So it took it. It didn't complain. It didn't say that I have an error, right? And then I'm going to reboot again. And then I'm going to check my IP. So log in once you reboot. Open up your terminal again once you logged in successfully. Press up arrow key a few times or type IP address. Right. So you notice that it's still stuck with the old one right here, right? So in the case where I can also go to and look at the table. Now what we're going to do is we're going to do sudo. So it's fine like this. If you don't see the previous address recorded, because it depends on how we put in, sometimes through command prompt, you have to also put in additional criteria in order to do that. But what we're going to do is we're going to look at the IP table. Okay, so you can say yes or no here if you see it or not. Take a screenshot. And then you're going to do sudo IP address show def f0. Put in your password. I keep typing it wrong too fast, maybe. Oh, I put who. I'm tired, sorry. Okay. So this is another way that you can look at your IP addresses, but using the show command for your adapter, right? And so in this case, my adapter, Ethernet 0, the first Ethernet adapter in the system, it still showed the old IP address that we put in through the graphical user interface, right? The reason why the second IP address, the 12.0 whatever, did not take is we didn't really completely put in everything for it, like the gateway, right? So it cannot build the socket. That's why you don't see it on, and you don't see it registered into the system. But you do see the one that we did in the prior steps. Okay, so take a screenshot. What is my interface state? Right? Does it tell me it's up or down? Right? It says state up. That means that your adapter is working. It's able to send and receive. But if it shows down, and usually it's color coded or Kali command line, then your adapter is not working. Okay. And then we're gonna, once you have your screenshot and answer the question, and look at this right here for B for 60, we're gonna close our command line. And you can, or you can do shutdown now. The reason why the now switch, you need to add this is because if you just do shutdown in Linux, it counts down 60 seconds. Then you have to wait, right? But if you do a shutdown now, it puts a 0 seconds here. So it's instantly shut down your Linux system. Boom, you're done, right? And then make sure we answer the last questions. Upon this completing this lab, what did you learn about Wireshark, right? We learned how to analyze packets with HTTP. We also look at statistic information for UDP, TCP, DNS, lots of things. So go through the steps again, right? And then looking at IO graphs, looking at endpoint statistic, and so much more, right? And then what did you learn about Kali Linux, right? You learn how to put in IP addresses through advanced network settings or configuration. You learn how to use command line. You learn how to view your IP addresses multiple ways using IP address, and also show command for your Ethernet adapter, right? And then how can you apply this in your career? And that's something you have to answer. All right, I'm gonna stop recording.